They called it Ridgefield Heights, a dream of glass mansions and infinity pools. But when the earth split open, those million-dollar homes sank like paper boats, and the HOA that built them screamed my name. I warned them. They laughed. Now the ridge had spoken louder than I ever could. I'd moved back to Ridgefield for peace after 30 years mapping fault lines for the government. I'd spent half my life listening to the ground measuring drilling, watching tension build where no one else cared to look. I thought retirement meant quiet mornings, my old dog coffee on the porch. But peace doesn't last long when greed starts moving dirt. The first sign came on a Tuesday, an excavator parked 200 feet from my fence line, its bucket resting on the soil like a threat. Survey flags dotted the field. A white SUV with the HOA logo gleamed under the sun. When I asked the man in charge what was going on, he barely looked up from his clipboard. New development. Ridgefield Heights. 13 executive homes. I told him this was seismic ground and active fault. He smirked. Old rumors. I said, no geological fact. He shrugged. Take it up with the board. So I did. That night I dug through my old hard drives, pulled out binders thick with maps and stress reports. The paper smelled like dust and memory. The next morning I walked into the HOA meeting, polished floors, fake oak table, lemon cleaner, and self-importance. At the head sat Karen Lattimore, our HOA president. Blonde hair, sharp smile, the kind of person who speaks in slogans and lawsuits. Mr. Talbot, she said, so nice of you to join us. I heard about the construction, I said. You're building directly on a fault line. Chuckles around the room. Karen raised a manicured hand for silence. We've followed all permits. The city cleared the land. If you have concerns, contact them. I laid my maps on the table, full-color overlays data from 18 years of monitoring. This isn't a concern. It's a warning. She slid the papers aside. Thank you for your input, Mr. Talbot. You're disrupting board business. That's a fine under the Community Interference Clause. Her gavel hit the table. That was the sound of the ridge cracking metaphorically. The literal part would come later. Weeks passed. Brochures showed up in mailboxes, glossy ads saying, "Elevate your life." Photos of luxury homes perched exactly over the fault I'd mapped decades ago. Each house had a name, the Aspen, the Marigold, the Summit, like christening ships before they sank. Karen's photo smiled on the back. We're building the future of Ridgefield. I showed it to my neighbor Darrell, a retired firefighter. He looked at the picture and muttered, "Looks like a damn resort." "It's a death trap," I said. "Well," he sighed, "you warned them." "Not done yet," I told him. I filed reports. Mailed certified letters, sent maps to the city's planning office. Weeks of silence. Then bulldozers arrived. The ridge shook under their weight. They hosted a groundbreaking ceremony with champagne and drone footage, Karen in her white blazer, the mayor smiling beside her. That night I sat in my workshop staring at my old earthquake monitor. The needle barely moved. Still, I could feel the pressure, the kind that hums under your feet before the world snaps. When the city ignored me, I went public. I wrote an op-ed, Fault Lines and False Promises. Within a day, a manila envelope showed up on my doorstep. Cease and desist, said the cover letter signed by Todd, the HOA's vice president of compliance, golf polo fake smile. You're in violation of the HOA's non-defamation clause. You're threatening me for publishing geological data, I asked. I'm just the messenger. Tell Karen I said the earth doesn't care about her lawyers. After that, they barred me from meetings, fined me for spreading panic, even sent security guards to keep me out. But fear cuts both ways. I set up a booth at the farmers market, Ridgefield Earthwatch. I showed Trimmer Graph's maps, old video footage. Some people laughed, others listened. A few signed my petition demanding a seismic review. Then came the cracks, thin fissures along Maple Hollow Drive near the first phase of Ridgefield Heights. To most eyes, nothing. To mine, a whisper. The ground was moving. That night, I drove home, shaking. I'd seen this pattern before Paso Robles, 1989. My sister Laurel had been house-sitting near a slope I'd flagged as unstable. I overslept the morning the quake hit. She died making coffee. That memory had buried itself deep, but kneeling over those cracks brought it roaring back. For the first time in decades, I felt that same useless guilt, the one that says, "You could have stopped it." I wanted to quit. What's the point of fighting people who'd rather believe brochures than bedrock? Maybe I was the crazy old man yelling at dirt. Then an email arrived. "Mr. Talbot, you don't know me. My name's Riley Park. I was in your sister's 5th grade class. I read your article. My family lost their home in a quake years ago. If you ever need a civil engineer, no cost, I'm here." I read it 3 times, and just like that, the loneliness cracked same as the ridge. I wasn't alone anymore. I called an old colleague at the USGS, Ed Ramos, sent him all my data photos, drone shots the city permits. He said, "Jesus, Rick, why hasn't anyone stopped them?" "Because the HOA controls the story," I said, "and the city likes campaign donations." 2 days later, a white SUV with the USGS logo rolled into town. 3 geologists stepped out, hard hats and clipboards in hand. Karen was waiting for them, flanked by her lawyer. "This is private property," she barked. The lead scientist smiled. "Emergency geological inspection. State authorized. If there's risk to public safety, your project's frozen." For the first time, Karen looked afraid. Within hours, sensors were in the ground. 2 days later, the USGS released an alert. Accelerating seismic instability detected along Western Ridge. Not an order, but a warning, enough to stop any sane person. Karen wasn't sane. She called the alert inconclusive and announced a grand opening for the Marigold model home that weekend. Live band, open bar, media invited. I watched her video invitation in disbelief. "Live on the edge," she said. The irony was biblical. Saturday came. Sky too, still air too thick. I stood on the trail behind my house, binoculars in hand. The ridge was crowded with SUVs and champagne glasses. Karen walked on stage in her white blazer, microphone gleaming. "Welcome to Ridgefield Heights," she said, "a place of beauty, safety, and legacy." At 10:16 a.m., the earth whispered a low vibration underfoot. Birds lifted from the trees. At 10:18, it screamed. The first jolt hit like a cannon. The stage buckled, people screamed, and the Marigold groaned a long metallic moan as its glass railings shattered. The foundation split clean down the middle. The back half of the house dropped into the ridge like a swallowed breath. Dust exploded upward, sirens in the distance. I gripped a tree, watching decades of warnings unfold in 30 seconds. Karen stood frozen, her perfect blazer streaked with dirt, staring at her dream collapsing into the ground. By noon, Ridgefield was a disaster zone. Roads cracked, power lines down, ambulances screaming. I filmed everything: the wreckage, the panic, the proof. When the news vans arrived, I sent them my data. I didn't need to speak. The footage spoke for me. That night, Karen appeared on live TV, pale, trembling, saying, "We had every reason to believe the land was stable." This was unforeseen. Unforeseen. The word made me laugh, sharp, bitter. I had 3 framed HOA violation letters on my wall. I lined them up beside the footage, the USGS report, every ignored warning. Then I sent it all to the Chronicle, the Times, every major outlet. I ended my message with one line: "They knew. They built anyway." The story exploded. National headlines. Luxury homes collapse on fault line. HOA. Ignored expert warnings. Karen's name everywhere. Lawsuits flooded in buyers, contractors, even a valet who broke his leg when the driveway split. The state attorney general launched an investigation. The geotechnical firm lost its license. And Karen Lattimore, Ridgefield's queen of ambition, resigned live on camera. Behind her, yellow caution tape flapped in the wind, wrapping her legacy like a crime scene. I didn't celebrate. I just sat on my porch, the ridge quiet at last. Somewhere under the dirt, the fault line exhaled. It had spoken, loud enough for everyone to hear. Truth doesn't beg to be heard, it waits. And when you ignore it long enough, it doesn't knock. It breaks the door down.